What's good, YouTube fam? It's your boy Tony, aka Descendant of Chaos and Controversy. And wait a minute, I'm looking like black Mr. Rogers right now. But in all seriousness, though, I want to talk about uh, the condition of this country and why it's where it's at today, and what were the circumstances that led up to this point. Um, and in all fairness, I would have to look at the position of the presidency. Has it always been under such scrutiny? Has it been compromised before? And surprisingly, yes, it has. There's been public opinion about our presidents. Um, sure as hell, the safety and well-being definitely has been compromised in regards to those who took seat in office and became the president, the representation of this country. Um, Taking a look back, there were four sitting presidents that have been killed. Abraham Lincoln in 1865, James A. Garfield in 1881, William McKinley in 1901, and of course, who we all know, John F. Kennedy in 1963. Two assassination attempts were Theodore Roosevelt in 1912, and of course, another familiar, Ronald Reagan in 1981. Um, but since then, you've had presidents that came and went that face public backlash, judgment, criticism. Um, we all know when it came to Nixon, you had the Watergate scandal, which he was impeached and resigned. Bill Clinton, he was facing impeachment because of his infidelity in his marriage, but they tried to get him for perjury. Okay. Of course, when it came to the Bush administration, they were criticized for the war and the greed and the purpose of why we went into war, which everybody came to a collective agreement to say it had to do with oil. You know, Obama, you know, first black president, he was criticized. Um, there are things about him that people didn't like. Um, and now we come to the 40 to Mr. 45. Um, Twice Trump under impeachment, claimed to have been racist. Said he was responsible for encouraging the insurgents on the Capitol. Um, and many other things that followed behind uh, the public opinion about Donald Trump. But with all that being said, being the president of the United States, I guess, isn't the most popular position or role to take in regards to being the face or the representation of America. Because look at what the previous administrations and presidents had to deal with. Okay, um, but the one thing that I noticed uh, to get to a particular point, um, as far as where my head is at, this country follows a certain pattern when it comes to division, um, and it seems like unity is a falsehood, something that cannot be accomplished won't allow to be accomplished because of personal interests. Um, and in order for that to be achieved, we have to put things into place for that to happen and be successful. I'm sure many are aware of the time of segregation where you had white privilege that was created, and how that was done was due to the fact that you have poor white people who start to identify with poor black people. And when you have two groups coming together on common ground with similarities and issues that they can relate to, that causes them to come together and be united. Well, for the powers that be, that's a no-no. They cannot have that. They won't allow that, and they would do anything in their power to prevent that. And how they did that was gave worth, value, a sense of entitlement, and purpose to the poor white individuals who didn't feel they had a place in society. Um, when you granted them access to all white schools, um, all white bathrooms, white only drinking fountains, restaurants, hotels, um, sports, um, even ranks in the military, um, neighborhoods, housing, banking, um, the bus situation, where blacks were denied any access, weren't allowed to, especially when it came to voting. All of that was granted and offered to white people, despite their class, despite their position in society. They were given some sense of worth, some sense of value, where melanated people, African Americans, were undervalued and seen as subhuman. They were discarded. They were expendable. Okay? But after segregation, here we go with evening out the playing field, so to speak. So to speak. Now, what's crazy, um, I was recently watching a documentary on crack on Netflix. And it was introduced during the Reagan era. And an all too familiar slogan was said or came out the mouth of Ronald Reagan was "Make America Great Again." Sounds familiar? Who else has said that? Who else was criticized for saying "Make America Great Again"? Trump, right? But during this time, we were facing a recession. Reagan was trying to cut benefit programs, and that, you know, took away from millions of Americans, especially those in impoverished neighborhoods. But ironically, during that time, uh, drugs, cocaine, especially specifically, was a white indulgence. Okay, black people couldn't afford cocaine. It was a white habit. Okay. Um, People in schools, going to school, colleges, they needed that adrenaline. They needed that pick me up. Cocaine. People in the stock market and corporations and stuff needed to pick me up. Need that boost. Cocaine. Party favors, going to the discos and the nightlife, entertaining the nightlife, or people in Hollywood and all these like high class societies and stuff. Cocaine, you know, it was an accepted drug. Black people couldn't afford it until they figured out how to freebase. And the spotlight was put on Richard Pryor because that fool caught himself on fire freebasing. So now that was like, an attention grabber. What's this freebase, you know? And then people started dibbling and dabbling and figuring out how to come to put one thing and mix it with another to create this high. And when that hit the ghettos or the projects or the poor neighborhoods, that poison started deteriorating the black community. Okay? Now, mind you, even though the black community was made to be scapegoats because of this situation, who allowed the drug to come in? But nobody wanted to touch that. Nobody wanted to talk about that. Hey, you gotta make something and vilify it, right? And forget who it affects. They're villains along with it. How do you profit off of that? How do you destroy lives? Well, everybody else can carry on their merry way and do what they, were doing. But there you go. The vision. So from segregation to the drug epidemic, the crack epidemic, then you had the issue with marijuana. Now you had what? Jobs going overseas to China, to India, and other places. Mexico. Right? Now, that took away from America. Because now it's like you want all these corporations to function, but you want cheap labor. So the CEOs could get rich and the American people, don't have retirement or a pension fund, insurance, nothing of that nature. Because, hey, if you have to pay all that out to the average American worker, that takes away from the profit margin to the CEOs who, out of greed, and then it goes from the CEOs to the CEOs because they can't just up and do things without permission and approval. So who do they pay to make that happen? Politicians. They line the politicians' pockets up with money. So in the end, who hurts? But then again, smoke and mirrors. When people say, just like, okay, when the slaves were freed, what was the boogeyman complex? Oh, no. You don't allow the blacks to come in to your neighborhood. Don't allow the blacks to come in and take your jobs and stuff like that, because you were here first. You were the ones that made America function and stuff like that. But we all know that's false. Because the cotton industry was booming. Why? Free labor. You didn't have to pay slaves. Think about it. Now, the factory jobs and the industrial jobs and all of that went overseas. Cheap labor. You don't got to pay people what you pay the average Americans. And then that same idea started to spark and come back alive when it came to the Mexicans. Oh, the Mexicans are coming over to take the jobs. Mexicans ain't taking no jobs that people really want. They're doing the jobs that people don't want to do. But it went from that to, okay, well, they're not. Let's change the narrative. Let's go from them coming over here taking jobs away to them coming over here illegally and taking resources away. Okay, so if that was true, then ask yourself this question. How is it that you can have people coming over here, African Americans, people from India, people from China, and they could come over here on a work visa, get grants, get loans that Americans aren't allowed access to. And we're Americans here in our own country, but people could come out as immigrants from elsewhere, come over here and tax free, start up their own businesses. But you demonize one aspect, but then allow something else. And then on top of that, when the so-called illegal immigrants come over, the Mexicans and stuff, who gives them the jobs? Who brings them over? Who provides them with fake documentation? But they say, hey, Trump wanted to build the wall, and that was racist. And then, I don't know, ironically, because of this pandemic, Americans that supported that are now going to New Mexico because they don't agree with the laws that are being put in place in regards to this pandemic, restricting them, not allowing them to do things that they would normally do. The irony of that. The Black Lives Matter movement. We had that. And that caused division because people painted a certain picture with half truths. I can't say it's a false narrative because the incidents that took place, the tragedies that has occurred, there's nothing untrue about it. It's sad, it's disgusting, and it's disheartening. How you give people or grant people the authority to carry out laws, and they abuse that authority by violating your civil rights and bullying you, harming you, and executing you. The false narrative or the half truth is that it was said that it was only an issue that plagued the black community. No. The unlawful conduct coming from law enforcement affected poor white people as well. Just because the spotlight wasn't shown on white people that were poor and stuff, only a few stories here and there, but they face the same amount of abuse, the same amount of mistreatment, the same amount of wrongful execution. But because black folks are more vocal about it, and white folks seem to be silent and not, how should I say, confrontational, you would be led to believe that law enforcement only affects the black community in a messed up manner. And that's not true. They know who to mess with and they know who not to mess with. They won't go up in Beverly Hills. They will not mess with people that have, money, have the influence. And there's been many recordings of them admitting to that because they know where the consequences lie if they mess with certain people who have certain influence over judges, mayors, politicians. You mess with their family or their kids or anything, that's your job right then and there. But for the porn and franchise, oh, they can walk all over them. They ain't nothing but peasants. They get to violate their rights, regardless of what color you are. If you poor, you don't stand a chance. You're at the mercy of tyranny. That's tyranny. But because that creates the racial division and the public perception can only focus on one aspect, disregarding the other aspect. That's what that's and then you create this sense of attitude that some white people might develop towards black people. I mean, and there are some white people that are smart and hip to it that say, I see what they did there. I see exactly what you did right there. And then there are other white people that use that as an excuse to further hate black people, have a distaste and disgust for them. Vice versa. When it comes to the Trump administration and Trump's following and his supporters, yeah, you have some ignorant white Trump supporters that look at him as, oh, shit, look at what Trump do. Look at his character. Look, he get to do what he want and get away with it. So can we. So that kind of ignited the ignorance or amplified the ignorance in some of his supporters who are white supremacists. There's no denying that there are some people who follow him that are white supremacists. And they've unleashed their ignorance openly and with total disregard to people of color. And then you had the media capitalizing on that. And I don't see how some of these people who are white supremacists cannot see that that worked against them. I've tried to advocate for unity in this country. I tried to point out things that I think people were blinded by or choose to ignore, and I had to bring their attention back to focus. To say, hey, you need to pay attention. You need to see what's going on. You need to understand what's going on. Because now, when you have people like myself and a few others that are trying to bring truth to the surface and point out the agenda that's apparent, you know, this country functions off of greed, control, and power. And at whose expense? This pandemic should have been a eye opener, a rude awakening as to like who and what the people in position of power think about people that are beneath them. While they can waste time and debate and argue amongst themselves, there are people that are suffering, but they don't care because they're not suffering. And we are the ones who put them in the position of power that they are in. So, in one sense, do you think I really am that critical of the storming of the Capitol? No. Do I think it should have happened? Who's to say? But people want to sit there and point the finger at Trump. Why don't they point the finger at the people that caused the the tiredness, the people being sick and tired of people controlling our fate, our livelihoods being at the mercy and in the hands of other people who shown that they clearly don't care about us. Then you could point the finger at Trump all you want, whether it be Trump supporters or black people storming the fucking Capitol, or Hispanic people storming the Capitol, or Asian people storming the Capitol. When you put people in a position where, damn, they ain't got nothing else to lose, what do you expect would be the outcome? That's the real question to ask. Take Trump out of the fucking equation. Let's just be honest. Take Trump out of the equation. What if he wasn't even a factor? And the shit that took place with Bitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi and other people in the House of Representatives. Huh? While they get so much money, while they could be rich, while they can not abide by the rules that they place on other people. Do as I say, not as I do. We're not your children. We're grown-ass adults. But there are certain rules put in place for certain people and other rules put in place for other people. And that's where people are seeing what's fair and what's unfair. But they rather distract you with this racial nonsense to keep us at each other's throat while they can carry on business as usual. Hey, y'all fight amongst yourselves, just leave us out of it. Nah. Look, you are the cause of this. And then it's like, how do you maintain structure to the unstructured? We have a country that's a crumbling empire. It's falling apart within. And I keep saying this, I keep pointing this out, but people are not paying attention. They're distracted by stupid shit. And while your liberties and your civil rights are being compromised, for what? One side gets to have a voice, the other side is being silenced. This social media shit is a joke. We give power, we give profits to these social media platforms just so they could turn around and take things from us. Our voice, the main thing that is powerful. The purpose of censorship, when you have people's undivided attention and facts translate into truth, they don't want the truth to be presented. They rather entertain and promote lies. And people feed into that. You can have something that took place, and then you get the details twisted and altered to fit a narrative. Only to find out years later, oh, this is what really happened. By then it's too late. I'm going to end it on this note. And I'm sure people will recognize this. People will sacrifice their freedoms for a false sense of security at any cost until that cost starts to affect them. Think about it. Anyway, please like, share, and subscribe. Until next video, you know how I go. Peace.